You're walking. It's somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. You're crossing a stretch of open terrain. This will eventually become Southern Europe. You have no map. You have no trail. You have a rough mental picture. Where water is. Where your group camped last season. Where the animals you hunt tend to gather. You are an extremely competent human being, operating at the full capacity of a brain essentially identical to yours. You are about to change your route, not because of a storm, not because the river shifted, because of something waiting in the landscape ahead. Something that has quietly reshaped movement of every living thing in this region for thousands of years. Most people think about what threatened early humans. They go straight to the classics: saber-toothed cats, cave bears, mammoths if you cornered a bad one. Those answers aren't wrong exactly, but they're incomplete in the way that matters. Because the animal that most consistently forced humans to rethink where they walked, how far they traveled in a day, which valleys they were willing to write off, wasn't the most dramatic predator. It was something that didn't roar, something that didn't charge, something that controlled territory effectively, with brutal consistency. Entire human populations bent their roots around it, for generations without confronting it directly. The creature is the cave hyena, Crocuta spelea, a subspecies of the spotted hyena, ranged across Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa. During the Pleistocene, it was catastrophic to run into in the dark. We know this not because someone wrote it down. Nobody was writing anything down. We know it because of what archaeologists find. In caves across France, Germany, Spain, and the British Isles. Bones. Thousands and thousands of cracked, chewed bones. Leftovers of an apex scavenger predator that didn't just pass through a landscape, it owned one. Here's what the conventional story leaves out. It isn't just about where humans wanted to go. It's about where something else already was. For a significant stretch of prehistoric Europe and Asia, the answer had teeth, traveled in groups, and did not negotiate. Cave hyenas didn't hunt like lions. They didn't rely on speed or ambush, nor the singular dramatic moment. One animal dead, the other satisfied. They operated on volume and persistence, and control of space. A clan ranged across hundreds of square miles, returning to the same caves and valleys, same water sources with regularity. Functionally, landlords of the Pleistocene landscape, and landlords don't ask permission. Archaeological evidence is staggering in consistency. Researchers excavate caves in southern France and northern Spain. They find the same pattern repeatedly. Deep chambers packed with animal remains. Bones cracked open for marrow. Bite force reached 1,100 pounds per square inch. Stronger than almost anything in Europe then. Hyena dens in Lunel-Viel cave held over 4,000 animals. Koneprusy caves in Czech Republic tell the same story. These weren't accidents of preservation. These were headquarters. Hyenas didn't just use caves for shelter. They used caves as pantries and nurseries, and territorial anchors simultaneously. A clan denning in a cave was installed, not just passing through. Every cave a clan occupied was off limits. Early humans couldn't use these caves. No shelter, no storage, no winter base. Entire mountain ranges locked behind a barrier. Aggressive, nocturnal, loud enough to be heard. Almost impossible to drive out. Without coordinated effort. Small human bands couldn't sustain that. Hyena range covered key migration corridors. The Rhone Valley, the Danube corridor, passes through the Caucasus. Geography demanded humans use these routes, but they were threaded with hyena clans, established across generations, den by den, valley by valley. Researchers note spatial distribution patterns, early human sites versus hyena dens. Overlap is minimal. Where hyena is concentrated, human evidence thins. Where hyena presence drops, human activity rises. Not coincidence. One species reading the landscape, making a rational decision, avoiding an argument it did not want. So what did humans actually do about it? The short answer is, they went around. The longer answer is that going around changed everything. When a population of early humans consistently avoids a valley, a cave system, a river corridor, something happens that looks small in the moment and turns out to be enormous over centuries. They find another way. And the other way, repeated enough times by enough people across enough generations, becomes a path. The path becomes a route. The route gets remembered, transmitted, refined. Dangers get noted. Resources along the detour get catalogued. And suddenly, a population that was forced off its most direct line of travel has accidentally mapped an entirely different portion of the continent. There is solid archaeological reasoning behind this. Some of the earliest evidence of long-distance material exchange in prehistoric Europe, ochre, shells, specific types of flint, moving hundreds of miles from their origin point, appears along routes that make no obvious geographic sense if you're simply trying to move efficiently between 2 points. They curve. They go through passes that require more elevation gain than necessary. They avoid valleys that look, on a modern map, like the obvious choice. Researchers have proposed multiple explanations for these counterintuitive paths: seasonal animal movements, water availability, social territories between human groups. All of those factors are real. But hyena distribution maps onto several of these anomalies in a way that is difficult to dismiss entirely. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you for a second. The detours that hyenas forced onto early human populations didn't just change where people walked. They changed who people met. When you reroute around a blocked corridor, you encounter different groups, different resources, different ideas. Genetic evidence from ancient human populations shows patterns of mixing and contact that are sometimes hard to explain through the most direct geographic logic. Some of that contact happened because people were pushed into proximity by what they were avoiding, not by what they were seeking. The hyena, without any intention whatsoever, functioned as a redistribution mechanism for human genetic and cultural exchange. There's something almost uncomfortable about how much leverage one species had over another that considered itself the most capable thing in the landscape. These were not naive creatures stumbling around in the dark. These were anatomically modern humans with language, with tools, with fire. And they still looked at a hyena-held valley and made the same calculation every time. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Go another way. Find another cave. There will be other valleys. That particular instinct, reading a landscape for what it costs you rather than just what it offers, might be one of the most underrated cognitive skills in the entire human story. And it was being sharpened, quietly, every time a clan changed course. The cave hyena went extinct in Europe somewhere around 11,000 years ago. The climate shifted, the megafauna collapsed, and one of the most dominant predator scavengers the continent had ever produced simply disappeared from the landscape it had controlled for tens of thousands of years. No dramatic last stand, no moment anyone recorded. Just absence, spreading slowly across valleys that had been locked for longer than most human civilizations have existed. But here is the thing about a force that shapes behavior for that long. It doesn't leave when the animal leaves. It leaves when the habit leaves. And habits, especially ones baked into how entire populations move through space, are extraordinarily slow to dissolve. Some of the road systems that Roman engineers built across Europe in the first centuries BCE and CE follow alignments that predate them by thousands of years. Those alignments follow paths that prehistoric populations had worn into the landscape through repetition. And some of those paths curve in ways that Roman engineers, who were extremely good at building straight roads, chose not to correct. The geography didn't demand the curve. Something older than the geography, older than memory, demanded it. Routes that began as detours around hyena territory became so deeply embedded in how people moved that they outlasted the reason for the detour by millennia. You do this too, by the way. Not around hyenas, but the cognitive architecture is identical. You avoid the street that always feels wrong after dark. You take the long way around the neighborhood your body has filed under uncertain before your conscious mind has finished forming the thought. You inherit routes from people who inherited them from people who had reasons that are now completely invisible to you. The path feels natural because it is natural, worn smooth by generations of the same calculation, the same reading of risk, the same quiet decision to spend a little more time getting there rather than find out what's waiting in the shortcut. Early humans didn't think of themselves as being controlled by hyenas. They thought of themselves as being smart about hyenas, which is a completely different thing and also exactly the same thing. The animal that forced ancient humans to change how they traveled never chased them, never confronted them, never made itself the centerpiece of a story anyone told around the fire. It just occupied the landscape. And the humans read the landscape, and they walked a different way. And that different way became the way. And in some places, through roads and highways and the invisible logic of how cities grew around the paths that were already there, it still is.